Welcome back here with India Today. Now, government sources have told India Today that there is possibility that Prime Minister Modi might meet Nawaz Sharif in New York on the sidelines of the UNGA. The last time the heads of the two forces met was in 2013, and the forthcoming meeting assumes significance in view of the cancelled NSA-level talks. Well, that is the latest that we're getting in at this point of time. Well, the UN General Assembly will be taking place next month, and in all possibility, it seems that Nawaz Sharif and Prime Minister Narendra Modi could in fact possibly meet on the sidelines of the UNGA. But all of this, of course, comes into light in the backdrop of cancelled NSA-level talks and much acrimony between the two countries. Well, what sources, in fact, are telling us is that this meeting, in fact, could very well be possible. And the talks are likely if Indo-Pak border tensions cease. And these talks could, of course, happen at the end of September when the UNGA takes place, and the meeting is possible on the sidelines of the UNGA. All right, that's the latest that we're getting in. The latest news break coming in, a possibility of Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and the Indian counterpart Narendra Modi meeting on the sidelines of the UNGA. Well, the meeting is in all probability possible at the end of September. It happens, of course, in the backdrop of the failed NSA-level talks, which never quite took place, and all the acrimony that we have seen between the two countries over the last couple of weeks. All right, I want to cut across to our managing editor, Rahul Kamal, who's joining us from the newsroom with more information on this. Rahul, can you get us up to speed with the latest development in this regard, and how much will it yield considering what we are coming off from?
Well, there are two factors, Preeti, that are being looked at very, very closely by the Indian government before deciding whether or not talks can resume in New York. Factor number one, the outcome of the BSF DG meeting with his Pakistani counterpart from the Pak Rangers. That meeting expected to happen in Delhi from the 9th of September to the 13th. The second is whether or not there's another terror attack between now and the last week of September, which is when the Prime Minister will be in New York. He'll be in New York on 2 days. Those are the same days that overlap with Nawaz Sharif being present in New York. And if there is significant forward movement in the meeting between the BSF DG and his Pakistani counterpart, then we've been given to understand a window of opportunity has suddenly been thrown up. That doesn't mean that this dialogue will take place or that the meeting will happen, but there is a high possibility that there might be a step taken towards resuming that aborted process, because the Pakistani High Commissioner Abdul Basit has given an interview in which he says that Pakistan never wanted that the agenda of the NSA level talks be expanded beyond terrorism. He says all we wanted to discuss was all forms of terrorism, which is exactly what India had been stating, which is exactly what India was complaining about earlier, saying that Pakistan is expanding the scope and including issues which weren't part of the UFA declaration. So while the sense in the government is that UFA is now dead and gone, it's not worth the paper it's written on, but the reality is that there is pressure both on Delhi and Islamabad to try and resume the dialogue process, especially because the Prime Minister will be meeting his American counterpart, American President Barack Obama, and also at a time when the Indian government is trying so hard to woo foreign investors, it doesn't want that this image go out that India and Pakistan are a nuclear flashpoint. There can be a crisis at any time, because that really goes against what foreign investors are looking for. So there is a window of opportunity that's now been thrown open. It's not as if this meeting will happen for sure, but if the BSF level, if the BSF DG talks are successful, then there is a possibility that Nawaz Sharif and Modi could meet on the sidelines of the UNGA in New York.
You know, Rahul, this window of opportunity, how much is it for the benefit of an international audience?
It works both ways. The sense within the Indian government, the overriding sentiment is that we don't want to have constant friction along the border, that the government's main priority is to push ahead with growth, with reform, with development, and any flashpoint really is counter to that, really takes the government's attention away, vitiates the atmosphere in the country, spooks foreign investors. They want to prevent that from happening. The other reality is that because of the fact that the United States is withdrawing from Afghanistan, there's a lot of pressure being applied both in Delhi and Islamabad by global capitals, not just Washington, that you have to engage with Islamabad. You can't have both the countries looking away from each other. There has to be dialogue, there has to be talks. So there is that pressure also. And one of the other interesting things, by speaking to people who were involved in the process of drafting the UFA declaration that we've gathered, is that the Prime Minister was very statesman-like in Russia. He said it's not about showing Pakistan down, it's about a win-win situation for both. So there is that sense. Of course, there's so many things that can go wrong. There's the Bihar election. Before the Bihar election, the government doesn't want that a message go out that it is desperate for talks with Pakistan. So there's no seeming desperation, but there is a calibrated sense that if Pakistan walks the talk during the Park Rangers meeting with the BGDSF, with the BSF DG, then there's something to show. Modi needs something to show, because the UFA approach was a unilateral approach made by our Prime Minister. That, of course, went kaput in a disastrous fashion. To be able to pick that piece up and to begin this dialogue process again, India needs something to show, and the BG and the BSF DG level talks could provide that. Remember, last time the two DGs met in 2013, and after that for 5 months the borders were completely quiet. If an agreement of that nature can be reached, if there's de-escalation along the border, then there's a possibility that the dialogue could possibly resume.
We appreciate you joining us, Rahul. We're going to keep coming back for more on that story.